Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am going to be telling you my 5 favorite new to me authors from 2020. So a new to me author is an author that I had not read previously. I am not counting debuts because debut authors are kind of new to everyone, but these are the authors that I discovered and really loved in 2020. Despite the fact that it was kind of a shitty year, it was a really great reading year, and I found some amazing new authors who are some of my favorites. So there's not too much preamble here, so let's just go ahead and get started. The very first author that I discovered last year and absolutely adored is Silvia Moreno Garcia. I read Gods of Jade and Shadow at the very beginning of the year. It was part of my pound per book savings that I did for 2019, and Gods of Jade and Shadow was one of the books that I bought with that book haul money. So it was one of the first books that I read last year. I read it in January and I really enjoyed it. And then I found out about Mexican Gothic. And I immediately fell in love with the cover, obviously, because the cover is amazing. I ended up getting my hands on an early copy of it, and it totally knocked my socks off. I loved it so much. And the thing that I really enjoy about Silvia Moreno Garcia is she has this incredible way of really, it sounds so cheesy to say, but painting a picture with her words. She is so good with imagery and with world building and really telling an incredibly lush story. I also happen to really love her heroines. She has incredible heroines who have so much agency and have such strong identities, and it really plays into their stories really strongly. So I absolutely loved Silvia Moreno Garcia's books last year, like many other people, because apparently, because of the success of Mexican Gothic, not only is her vampire book coming back into print, which I'm so happy about because I tried to get my hands on a copy and it's out of print. It's really hard to find. She also has more stuff coming out next year. I can't remember the titles off the top of my head. I'll list them down below in the description, but I believe one is kind of a noir-ish book, and I think the other may be fantasy. I am making that up, so go ahead and check out the links down below and I will put all of her upcoming stuff. She's so good. She's such a fabulous writer, and I would really recommend Gods of Jade and Shadow if you are into mythology, and I would very much recommend Mexican Gothic if you're into horror. And speaking of horror, the very next author that I have on my list is Grady Hendrix. I read almost every book that Grady Hendrix has published, every fiction book I should say, last year because I listened to the audiobook for my best friend's exorcism. I think it was right after I listened to The Bone Witch by Rin Chapeko, which sounds like a really weird like connection, but it's the same narrator who did The Bone Witch, and I really liked her, so I sought out other stuff that she had. I saw that she did my best friend's exorcism and I immediately picked it up and I really loved it. It's a sort of campy, fun 80s set horror book about a girl who believes that her best friend is possessed by a demon. It's really fun. It's like proper horror. There's some really gross stuff that happens in it, and it's quite disturbing and unsettling, especially in the sense that the adults, but especially male adults, just do not listen to these teenage girls when they think that something is very wrong, whether it's supernatural or otherwise. And I found that theme carried really well into the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which was fabulous. That was his new release for last year, and he did an amazing job with that as well. That one is 90s set, and it sort of focuses on housewives, and basically they have a true crime book club, and it turns out that one of them, their sort of charming new neighbor, may be not quite the man that he says he is. That book is so disturbing and unsettling, not because of the supernatural elements, although those are quite horrifying as well. I thought that the way that especially the husbands treat their wives and some of the wives treat each other is so It's unsettling. I can say that word a million times. It's unsettling, and I thought that he did a fabulous job with that. I also read Horror Store, which I think was his debut, and I didn't love it as much as the other ones. The real kind of the like hook for this book is the fact that it's basically a IKEA catalog. It's the same shape, and it's got a lot of the sort of like the line drawings with the description of what the like furniture item is, and they get more and more bizarre as the story goes on. And that's basically a classic haunted house story set in a knockoff IKEA, which was really fun. I really liked the concept, but I thought his other stuff was much stronger. And I believe this year he has a book coming out. I'll need to double check, but I think it's about the final girls from horror films, the girls who are left alive at the end of the movie or the book or whatever, and that sounds so incredibly good. I'm very much looking forward to that. Next, I have an author who totally blew me away. I kind of stumbled upon him, I wouldn't say by accident, but the title caught my eye. It was a Tor.com original, which is always going to be a good thing for me because the stuff they put out is really, really good. And I found this audiobook on Scribd. I don't have Scribd anymore. I had a tumultuous relationship with Scribd over the course of the pandemic. I currently don't have it, but if you do, I would highly, highly recommend P. Jelly Clark. So I picked up A Dead Gin in Cairo, which is a fabulous title, and I listened to that. It's very, very short. It's definitely more of a short story than a novella, and it totally blew me away. It's set in, I think 1912 Cairo, but it's an alternate Cairo where a sort of magician, magic user type tore a hole between our world and the world of the jinn, and so there's lots of crossover, and Cairo has kind of become a world hub, a world superpower. And our stories in this series focus on this particular ministry within the police that investigates supernatural crime. So A Dead Gin in Cairo is the first one. The Haunting of Tramcar 015, which is also fabulous, is the second one. And then in, I think, May of this year, we have the third one, which is going to be a full-length novel called Master of Jinn, which sounds so incredibly good. He also wrote a book called The Black God's Drums, which is set in a sort of alternate New Orleans, which is fabulous. It's really, really, really good. Another great audiobook. And I read his new release from last year, which is called Ring Shout, which is another alternate history set around Prohibition America, in which black bootleggers are also hunting monsters that are hiding within the Ku Klux Klan. He is such an incredible writer. Not only are his concepts absolutely amazing, but his writing is really beautiful, his characters are fabulous, and I could not recommend him more highly. So 2020 was the year that I discovered Rebecca Roanhorse. I have had Trail of Lightning sitting on my TBR, where it still is, for quite a while. I picked up a copy of it in Forbidden Planet in London, which shows you just how long it's been since I've had that popped on the shelf for the first time. But I've never ended up reading it, and I am definitely planning on picking it up now because I read Black Sun last year and it was one of my top 10 books of the year. I absolutely fell in love with it. I fell in love with her writing and her characters, and it's such a good book, and I highly, highly encourage you to pick it up if you are a fantasy lover. So not only is Black Sun a really interesting book because it's sort of outside of the classic European setting, it's set in a kind of pre-colonial America type setting. It's also an incredibly complex book that weaves together mythology and prophecy and magic, and it's just so good. It's so incredibly good. I could read about this world forever and ever and ever and be so happy because it's so beautifully built and it's so sort of intricate, and it's another one of those where she really paints a picture in your head of what's going on, because the detail of the culture and the detail of the people and different kinds of people is so wonderful. I thought that this was just such an incredible book. It broke a reading slump for me in November, which makes it even more near and dear to my heart, and I was totally blown away. I know some people haven't loved Trail of Lightning as much, and I would definitely say, without having picked up Trail of Lightning myself, you should definitely give this one a try because it's beautifully done. And the last author that I have on my list is probably the biggest. Last year was the year that I read N.K. Jemisin for the first time. I picked up the 5th season in February after a trip to a bookstore with a few friends, and my friend Josie, who is a fabulous author and a blogger, was standing with me in Blackwell's in Oxford, and we were looking at the shelves. And she said, Justine, have you read the 5th season? Because you'd love it. And I said, no, I've had it on my shelf for like 3 years, but I've never picked it up because I knew I would love it. So I've been putting it off. And she just looked at me and was like, Justine, just read it. Just read it. You'll love it. You're gonna have such a good time with it. So I was like, oh, fine. So I went home and I picked it up and it totally blew me away. This is one of the rare instances of me actually reading a series almost back to back. I had a few books in between, and I ended up kind of buddy reading this with Rachel from the Shades of Orange because she was reading them at the same time, although she was a little bit ahead of me. So I had the chance to also talk about these books with her, which was so good. I did a reading vlog for the 5th season back in February, so I will go ahead and link that on the screen and you can check it out and see it just like tear me apart on the inside in real time. And I was such a fool to put it off for so long because I did love it just as much as I thought. And it's such a complex fantasy that's so different from anything else I've ever read. So the Broken Earth trilogy, of which the 5th season is the first book, takes place in a world in which there are these huge cataclysmic events called seasons. Basically, the Earth is kind of tearing itself apart, and mankind is sort of living in the civilization in which really the main thing that they do is prepare for seasons. All of like the cultures and the ways of living are sort of built around seasons. So in this backdrop, we have a woman who comes home one day and finds her young son has been murdered. He's been beaten to death by his father, and her daughter is missing. Presumably the girl's father, her husband, has taken her away, so she goes out to try to find her daughter. And that sounds very simple, but it's a very complex book. It is gorgeous. It is such a well-written, well-built world with fantastic characters, and it's just as mind-blowing as I thought it would be. It was just an absolutely fabulous read. Outside of the Broken Earth trilogy, I also read The Killing Moon, which is the first book in the Dreamblood duology, which is a very complicated story that sort of revolves around this magic involving dreams and the power of dreams, which was really good. I need to finish that duology. It's on the list. I read Emergency Skin, which is kind of a short story that she wrote for Kindle, which is sci-fi, which was really good. I really enjoyed that, and I'd love to read more sci-fi from her. And then last year I also read The City We Became, which was her new release for last year, and it's basically New York City as a sentient living city with these 5 avatars who sort of have to defend the city against evil. It's much more complicated than that. It's super weird, and it was fabulous, and I loved it. So I was really blown away by N.K. Jemisin. She's kind of author of the year for me. I thought that everything that I read from her was so good and so top-notch, and I honestly can't wait to read the rest of her backlist. So that is it for my slightly rambling top 5 new to me authors for 2020. I'm sure you could get the sense of excitement that came across, but I absolutely adored reading every single one of these authors' books. I cannot wait to find out who I discover in 2021, and I am planning on reading lots and lots of all of these authors' backlists. I would love to know in the comments below if you read any of these authors, if you had similar thoughts to me, and also which authors you discovered in 2020. Let me know if you have any recommendations. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.